Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the State Route 183 Castroville Improvement Project virtual public hearing. My name is Michael Oye, and I'm the Environmental Coordinator and will be your host for this evening and presenter. We appreciate your interest in this project and welcome each of you. Tonight's virtual public meeting has a primary goal to inform you of the project details and provide opportunity for input and comments on the draft environmental document prepared for the proposed project. We will be recording tonight's meeting for posting on the project website.
We just would like to confirm if there's a Spanish speaker that needs translated.
Yes, Orchid, I'm going to unmute Beatrice, and then you can ask her directly if she needs to have Spanish translation. She did raise her hand. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute her now. You can let her know.
Beatrice? Queremos saber si, buenas tardes. Queremos saber si quiere traducción de esta presentación en español.
Sí, por favor.
Bueno, entonces así moveremos así seguiremos. Gracias. Si tiene alguna pregunta, por favor, levante la mano durante la presentación. Gracias.
Ok, gracias.
She does need translation, so Michael, as you present, please speak slowly and give me some time at the end so I can make sure it grabs all the information so I could translate for her.
Thank you, Orchid. Given the unique circumstances with the COVID-19 pandemic, Caltrans is committed to following social distancing guidelines. Therefore, this meeting will be a virtual public meeting instead of an in-person meeting.
Por el motivo de COVID no podemos presentarnos en persona, pero por eso estamos haciendo esta audiencia virtual para informarle al público sobre nuestro proyecto.
We will use this format to gain your input, but please feel free to contact us after tonight if you have additional questions. Our contact information will be provided later during the presentation.
Estaremos haciendo esta presentación de esta forma virtual, pero si tiene preguntas acerca de este proyecto, nos puede contactar en Caltrans y le daremos la información al final de esta presentación.
We will start the introductions and proceed with an overview of the project design, including both roadway work and features that address pedestrian and bicycle access and transit users. Following the project overview, we will present the results of the project's environmental review and then begin the question and answer portion of this meeting.
Le presentaremos todo lo que vamos a hacer en este proyecto sobre en esta área, y si tiene preguntas al final nos puede hacer las preguntas, pero es sobre referente del medio ambiente para toda la información que se requiere para esta participación. Vamos a obtenerla y podemos contestar sus preguntas al final de esta presentación.
For our live attendees, you may notice that you're muted. We will be monitoring the chat bar, so if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat bar. The presentation will end with what's coming up next and our contact information.
Si tiene una pregunta, lo puede hacer por el medio de chat o puede levantar la mano.
I would like to briefly introduce the members of tonight's Caltrans panel.
Queremos presentar a los miembros que van a participar hoy.
We have with us Stephen McDonald from our design team, Matt Fowler from our environmental planning team,
Tenemos a diseño y el del medio ambiente,
Orchid Monroy Ochoa, John Olenek, and Audrey Ogden from our transportation planning team, Kevin Drabinski with our public information team, Corby Kilmer from our landscaping team, and Danielle Leckie from our cultural resources team.
y otros miembros de Caltrans del Departamento de Planeación, de Cultural y de otras áreas, por si tienen preguntas.
Daniel Leckie from our Cultural Resources team, Joseph Andrew from our Right-of-Way team, Katrina Hernandez is from our Project Management team and will be assisting me with moderating the question and answer session, as well as monitoring the chat box throughout the meeting. And finally, we have Brandy Ryder, my co-host and the project manager.
Mencionó otros miembros del equipo y también de la persona que va a estar encargada en decirnos si tiene alguna pregunta durante la presentación.
And Brandy, would you like to say a few words before we move on?
Quisiera hacer unas preguntas, Brandy, antes de comenzar.
Tonight, we're happy to announce that Supervisor Phillips from the Monterey County District 2 Supervisor's Office is here, as well as Transportation Agency of Monterey County Executive Director Debbie Hale. Supervisor Phillips, you are unmuted, so please feel free to greet and welcome our audience as soon as Orchid introduces you in Spanish.
Le queremos dar la bienvenida al Supervisor Phillips, que va a introducir el proyecto y va a dar una bienvenida.
Thank you, Brandy, and all those attending. I'll be on here, but I also have my Chief of Staff, Josh, who will be on there too. We do appreciate all the hard work that Caltrans has been doing to try to make our community main road a little safer and better for transportation. So we appreciate all the hard work that, and this wasn't a project that we come up with and said we wanted to get it fixed. It was Caltrans that reached out to us and said, we think we can get up and make this place a lot better, and we think we can come up with the money. So there's a couple of things. One thing that I'm interested in a roundabout, and I'm hoping Tamsy and the other ones can maybe partner with the county and Caltrans to make that opening. So look forward to hearing the presentation. I've heard it as we've gone along and looking forward to it. Thank you.
El supervisor le quiere dar las gracias a Caltrans por pensar en esta área para hacer los mejoramientos y quiere también mencionar de que él desea un redondel en esta área y quiere ver cómo, entre otros, gente que podemos reunir esos fondos para poder hacer ese redondel en esta área. Pero sobre todo le está dando las gracias por querer hacer mejoramiento en esta área.
Thank you, Supervisor. We greatly appreciate your participation in tonight's event, and we look forward to a continuing partnership. Also tonight, we have Executive Director Debbie Hale. Debbie, would you like to say anything after Orchid has an opportunity to introduce you?
Ahorita presentamos a la directora Debbie Hale de Tamsy.
Hi, so I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight to learn about the latest design for the project. And I want to thank our partners at Caltrans for advancing this project. And I look forward to moving it through the process and hopefully making that corridor a lot safer for everyone to use.
Quiere dar las gracias a Caltrans y quiere agradecer por avanzar este proyecto y para hacer esta área más seguro para todos los miembros del público.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Supervisor Phillips. We greatly appreciate all of your agency support for our project team and looking forward to continuing that partnership.
Agradece que todos podemos trabajar juntos en este proyecto y continuar con este proyecto juntos para hacer esta área mejor.
Michael, I'll pass it back to you for the next slide.
In accordance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as amended, and the Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987, Caltrans will make every effort to ensure non-discrimination in all of its programs and activities, whether they are federally funded or not, and that services, benefits, and are fairly distributed to all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, gender, age, disability, or income.
Por el título 6, queremos decir que estamos haciendo todo lo posible para dar esta grabación en español. Si es necesario que ustedes necesiten más información, por favor contactarnos para que toda la información sobre este proyecto esté disponible para usted.
Caltrans will facilitate meaningful participation in the transportation planning process in a non-discriminatory manner. Caltrans Title VI policies are found on the Caltrans website.
Esta forma se trata de que no sea discriminatoria a cualquier raza, entonces si usted necesita más información puede localizarla en nuestro sitio de internet.
To obtain this information in an alternate format, such as Braille or in a language other than English, please contact Caltrans by mail, phone, or email at title.vi@dot.ca.gov. The email is also provided in the chat bar.
Para obtener esta información en escrito o en otra forma, por favor, localícenos a nuestro email o al número de teléfono y también la información está disponible vía chat.
This presentation, in addition to all project information, documents, and supporting materials, are on the project's website, which can be accessed from the Caltrans District 5 website. As a reminder, we are recording this virtual public meeting for posting on the website. During the question and answer session, it may be difficult to fully translate the questions and answers, since it tends to be more of a conversation. Therefore, following the meeting, we will review all the questions and responses and post them on the project website.
Esta información está disponible en el sitio de internet y si por cualquier motivo yo no puedo contestar sus preguntas en español, vamos a escribirlas y le vamos a contestar por el medio de email o por hablarle o por teléfono para saber la respuesta sobre su pregunta.
They will be posted in English and Spanish. We will make every effort to include all materials and outcomes of this meeting on our website.
Pondremos esta información en español en el sitio de internet para que pueda visitar la página en cualquier minuto que tenga una pregunta.
The virtual public meeting for the State Route 183 Castroville Improvement Project has 4 primary goals: to inform the public of the project status and to provide information on the potential impacts to the environment.
La razón que estamos teniendo esta reunión es porque queremos informarle de lo que pasa de este proyecto y lo que va a pasar sobre el medio ambiente en esta área.
To describe the project so the public would know how they may be affected, to give the public an opportunity to provide input and comments on the draft environmental document, and to develop a record of public views and participation that Caltrans will use to make subsequent decisions.
Queremos dejarles saber cómo va a ser afectado por su proyecto, queremos recibir cualquier comentario que usted tenga sobre el proyecto y queremos recordar de que esto va a ser grabado para que haya recolección de que hubo participación sobre este proyecto.
Following the public comment period, all written comments received will be given full consideration and will be addressed in the final environmental document. You may provide your comments by mail.
Cualquier comentario que recibamos escrito lo vamos a grabar en el documento final ambiental y vamos a grabar nuestras respuestas hacia usted.
By email postal service or to the attention of Matt Fowler, Environmental Branch Chief. Comments must be received by the deadline of June 11th, 2021 in order to be included in the official public record.
Si quiere escribir sus comentarios o preguntas, lo puede hacer a esta dirección y tienen que ser antes de la fecha de junio 11 del 2021.
The draft environmental document available for your review is a combined environmental study and environmental assessment. You may access this document from the following website, https://dot.ca.gov/Caltrans near me, District 5 current projects. This is also provided in the chat bar.
Si quiere obtener el reporte del medio de ambiente, por favor siga este link que también está disponible en el vía chat.
The project is in Monterey County on State Route 183, locally known as Merritt Street, from just south of Del Monte Avenue, south of Castroville, to the junction with State Route 1 north of town.
Can you go back a slide, please? Michael. Este proyecto está localizado en Castroville, en la carretera 183, en la calle Merritt, y este es el principio y el final del proyecto donde está localizado en la ruta 183.
We will now describe the purpose, alternatives, and design features of the State Route 183 Castroville Improvement Project.
Vamos a describir lo que propone este proyecto.
The purpose of this project is to improve the ride quality and prevent further deterioration of the pavement, address bridge maintenance needs, improve accessibility under the Americans with Disabilities Act to address deficiencies within the project limits, increase and improve access and connectivity for public transit, bicycle, pedestrian users along and across Merritt Street, improve highway awareness of public transit, bicycle, pedestrian users along and across Merritt Street, and address all of this to address structural deficiencies and improve multimodal travel.
El proyecto propone mejorar el pavimento, el acceso de bicicletas y de peatones, el puente y mejorar otras áreas de 183 de la ruta estatal para el mejoramiento de todos los que manejan y de los que caminan en esta área.
Randy, would you tell us a little bit more about the project?
Thank you, Michael. There are two alternatives under consideration, a build alternative and a no-build alternative. An interdisciplinary team developed the alternatives that are under consideration.
Hay dos alternativas en este momento. La primera alternativa es todo lo que acabamos de mencionar de mejoramiento y en la otra no es mejorar ninguna.
In general, the build alternative will rehabilitate the pavement, address essential bridge needs, improve multimodal features, install ITS features, and improve aesthetic and bicycle connectivity.
En el alternativo, primero que tienen de rehabilitar el pavimento y de mejorar el puente y de mejorar el tránsito, el área de peatones, donde manejan los carros, las curvas, instalar luces y mejorar la continuidad de bicicletas y la seguridad de todos los peatones.
The build alternative would meet the purpose and need for the project.
I'm sorry, Brandy, you cut off.
The build alternative would meet the purpose and need for the project.
Si construimos la alternativa de construir, me haría todos los requisitos necesarios para esta área.
The no build alternative would do no roadway improvements. It would not meet the purpose and need of the project, and maintenance would continue within the corridor.
Si no construimos algo, no va a mejorar en esta área los requisitos mencionados antes y todo seguirá igual.
For ease of presentation, we have segmented the corridor into 2 block segments. We will start with the first 3 segments between Washington Street and Poole Street.
Vamos a explicar este proyecto en 3 segmentos enseguida.
For this first segment, we will look at Washington to Cooper, and we are proposing several improvements. Between Washington and Meade, we will be installing new sidewalk as depicted by the yellow line with a black dash, including closing a gap in the sidewalk on the east side of Merritt Street.
En el primer segmento de Washington a Cooper van a mejorar el área donde caminan los peatones y está en líneas negras.
Sidewalk improvements between Meade Street and Cooper include improving existing sidewalks, which would include rehabilitating or widening the sidewalk in this area. It is depicted with a solid yellow line.
Entre la calle Meade y Cooper están las líneas amarillas donde van a mejorar el pavimento donde caminan los peatones que existen actualmente.
Crosswalks are depicted with a lime green line and will be installed at both Meade and Cooper.
Van a instalar 2 áreas donde puede cruzar los peatones, uno en Meade y uno en Cooper.
For accessibility for our pedestrians with disabilities, curb ramps will be either installed or improved for ease of access on all corners, as depicted by the yellow circle.
Los círculos amarillos quiere decir que las curvas van a ser mejoradas para que los peatones puedan tener acceso al área de caminar.
Bulb outs will be installed on the southeast and southwest corners of Cooper, Meade, and Washington Streets to help improve pedestrian accessibility.
Van a mejorar el área suroeste y este para los peatones donde se encuentran las curvas.
There are 2 transit stops in this segment, and we're working with Monterey Salinas Transit to identify the needs at each transit stop within the corridor.
Hay 2 paradas de autobús y van a trabajar con MST para mejorar esa área.
Finally, the dark green line is to identify bicycle access along the route. We will be developing a design that will provide improved bicycle access as a continuous route along the corridor.
Las líneas verdes es donde van a mejorar el pavimento para las bicicletistas.
Between Sanchez and Meade Street, we will be also improving sidewalks, which will be included widening the existing sidewalks or rehabilitating the sidewalks that are damaged, as shown by the yellow solid line.
Las líneas amarillas quieren decir que van a mejorar el área de pavimento para los peatones para hacerlo más ancho y mejorarlos para los peatones.
Again, with the curb ramps, those are shown with the yellow circles and for ease of access for our pedestrians and users with disabilities.
Para la accesibilidad de nuestros usuarios con discapacitados, se instalarán o mejorarán las rampas en las banquetas para facilitar el acceso. Estas mejoras de rampas se identifican con el círculo amarillo.
Bulb outs will be also installed at Preston and Sanchez Streets to help with pedestrian access.
Estas áreas van a ser mejoradas para los peatones para el acceso.
There are 2 transit stops in this segment, and we will continue to work with Monterey Salinas Transit to identify any changes to the transit stop locations.
Hay 2 paradas de tránsito y vamos a trabajar con el MST para mejorar esas áreas.
And finally, the dark green line is to identify the continuous bicycle route along the corridor.
La línea verde quiere decir el mejoramiento para los bicicletistas en este corredor.
The next segment is between Crane and Pool.
El otro segmento es entre la calle Crane y Pool.
Between Crane and Rico, we will be installing new sidewalk as depicted with the yellow line with the black dash.
Entre Crane y Rico instalaremos una nueva banqueta como se muestra con la línea amarilla con guión negro. Incluiremos banquetas que hacen falta al lado de esta calle Mary.
The other sidewalk improvements depicted between Crane and Pool are improving existing sidewalks, which include rehabilitating damaged sidewalks or widening.
Las otras mejoras a las banquetas entre la calle Crane y Pool incluyen mejora de la banqueta existente que incluirá hacer un ancho o rehabilitar la acera que está dañada. Esto se identifica como una línea amarilla continua.
Crosswalks will be installed at Crane Street.
Los cruces peatonales que se muestran como en línea verde lima se instalarán en la calle Crane.
For accessibility for our pedestrians, we'll be installing curb ramps, and those are depicted with the yellow circle.
Para la accesibilidad de nuestros usuarios peatones con discapacidades, se instalarán o mejorarán las rampas en las banquetas para facilitar el acceso.
There are 2 transit stops in this segment. We'll be working with Monterey Salinas Transit. The needs that will be utilized within the corridor include additional space for pullouts, travel lanes for loading and unloading passengers, new bus shelters, or bicycle racks.
Hay 2 paradas de tránsito en este segmento. Estamos trabajando con Monterey Salinas Transit para identificar las necesidades en cada parada de tránsito en el corredor. Estas necesidades van a permitir espacio adicional para que los autobuses salgan del carril de circulación para la carga, descarga de pasajeros, nuevos paradas de autobuses, muebles para autobuses o instalación de portabicicletas.
To separate parking and live traffic, there are 2 bulb-out islands just north of Crane Street. These are not intended for crossing access, but to separate parking and live traffic.
Can you repeat that, Brandy?
Yes. To separate parking and live traffic, there are 2 bulb-out islands just north of Crane Street.
Para separar los vehículos y los peatones, van a haber 2 bulb-outs en el área de Crane Street.
Finally, the dark green line is to identify bicycle access along the route.
Finalmente, el área verde es para mejorar el área para los bicicletistas.
It should be noted that between Crane and Rico, to accommodate bicycle access, on-street parking will not be allowed.
Es necesario notar que entre Crane y Rico no van a dejar que parqueen los vehículos.
Some sections of the roadway are narrow, so bicycle access will be in the shoulder, where today we have on-street parking. This parking will have to move to a local side street.
El área donde quieren mejorar no es muy ancho para los bicicletistas, entonces el parqueo de vehículos no va a poder ser posible en esa área.
The next 3 segments will discuss Union Street to Blacky Road.
Los próximos 3 segmentos discutiremos la cobertura desde la calle Unión hasta Blacky Road. En cada mapa tenemos la leyenda para ofrecer una visión general de alto nivel de trabajo que estamos proponiendo.
In this segment, Union Street to Salinas, we are proposing several improvements.
Las mejoras y las banquetas entre Union y Salinas incluyen la mejora de la banqueta existente que incluye hacer ancho o banqueta, rehabilitar la banqueta que está dañada, que se identifica con línea amarilla continua.
Sidewalk improvements between Union and Salinas are to improve existing sidewalks, as shown by the yellow line.
Como acaba de informar, la línea amarilla quiere decir de que van a mejorar las áreas dañadas que pueden mejorar para el área de los peatones.
Crosswalks are shown with a lime green line and will be installed at Pájaro Street and at the on and off ramps for Highway 156-183 Interchange.
Los cruces de peatones que se muestran como una línea verde lima se instalarán en la calle de Pájaro y en las rampas de entrada y salida para el intercambio del 156 y 183 de la carretera estatal.
We also will be installing curb ramps as shown by the yellow circles for accessibility for our pedestrian users with disabilities.
Para la accesibilidad de nuestros usuarios de peatones con discapacidades se instalarán o mejorarán rampas de aceras para facilitar el acceso.
Again, there are 2 transit stops in this segment, and we will be continuing to work with Monterey Salinas Transit.
Hay 2 paradas de tránsito en este segmento y estamos trabajando con Monterey Salinas para identificar las cosas necesarias en nuestra área.
And then the dark green line is to identify bicycle access within this segment.
Nuevamente, la línea verde oscura es para identificar el acceso para bicicletas a lo largo de la ruta.
The next segment is between State Route 156 Interchange to Wall Street.
La próxima es para la ruta estatal 155 y Wall Street.
There are sidewalk improvements to existing sidewalk, which include widening or rehabilitation.
Las mejoras a las banquetas entre la ruta estatal 156 y Walsh incluyen la mejora de banqueta existente que incluye hacer más ancho la banqueta.
Crosswalks are shown as lime green and will be installed at Wood Street, Haro Street, and at the on and off ramps of the interchange.
Los cruces de peatones que se muestran como en línea verde lima se instalarán en Wood Street, Haro Street y en las rampas de entrada y salida para el intercambio de la ruta estatal 156 y 183.
For accessibility, we'll be installing curb ramps at all of, as shown by the yellow circle.
Se instalarán mejoras de curvas en esas áreas donde enseña un punto amarillo.
A rapid flashing beacon is proposed at the crosswalk at Wood Street.
En la calle Wood Street se recomienda una luz para advertir que están cruzando los peatones.
There are 2 transit stops in this segment, and we will continue to work with Monterey Salinas Transit.
Hay 2 paradas de tránsito en este segmento y estamos trabajando con Monterey Salinas Transit para identificar las necesidades a cada parada de tránsito en el corredor.
And the dark green line is to identify bicycle access along the route.
Nuevamente, la línea verde oscura es para identificar el acceso para bicicletas a lo largo de la ruta.
Our final segment is between Monterey Street and Blacky Road.
Nuestro segmento final está entre la calle Monterrey y Blacky.
Sidewalk improvements will be including improving existing sidewalk,
Las mejoras a la banqueta entre la ruta estatal 156 y la calle Walsh incluyen la mejora de banqueta existente que incluye hacer la banqueta más ancha.
Crosswalks are shown as a lime green and will be installed at Jackson and Blacky Road.
Los cruces peatonales que se muestran como en línea verde lima se instalarán en las calles de Jackson y Blacky.
For accessibility, for our pedestrian and users with disabilities, we will be installing curb ramps, as shown by the yellow circles.
Para la accesibilidad de nuestros usuarios de peatones con discapacidades, se instalarán o mejorarán rampas en las banquetas para facilitar el acceso.
And again, the dark green line identifies bicycle access along the corridor.
Nuevamente, la línea verde oscura es para identificar el acceso para bicicletas a lo largo de la ruta.
Project costs include construction, right-of-way, and utility relocation costs.
El costo del proyecto incluye la construcción y todo el área que tienen que comprar para hacer estas mejoras.
The total project construction cost is estimated at $20.6 million.
El costo de este proyecto es de 20.6 millones.
Right-of-way and utility costs are estimated at $2.1 million.
Lo que se tiene que comprar de propiedad y utilidades está a 2.1 millón.
Construction would take 2 years and begin in November of 2023.
La construcción durará 2 años y empezará en noviembre de 2023.
Construction would be completed in October 2025, and an additional 1-year plant establishment period would also apply.
La construcción sería terminado en el octubre del 2025 y todavía van a agregar 1 año más para establecer todas las plantas que se ponen en el área.
Okay, Michael, this next section is for you.
We will now describe the project's compliance with regulatory requirements, potential environmental effects, and proposed avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures.
Lo que vamos a informar ahorita es todo lo regulatorio que se necesita para el medio ambiente para este proyecto.
The project is subject to state and federal environmental review requirements.
Este proyecto tiene requisitos estatales para lo que está cubierto de dinero que está fundando este proyecto.
Project documentation has been prepared in compliance with both the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA, and the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA.
Todos los documentos han sido escritos con todos los requisitos de NEPA y CEQA.
Caltrans is a lead agency under both the National Environmental Policy Act and the California Environmental Quality Act.
Caltrans es el que líder de este proyecto bajo todos estos requisitos.
Pending public review, Caltrans intends to adopt a finding of no significant impact, known as FONSI, per the National Environmental Policy Act, and a mitigated negative declaration per the California Environmental Quality Act.
Todavía tenemos que llevar toda esta información al público y enseñársela. Si no hay ninguna cosas con contradice, Caltrans planea decir de que no hay ningún efecto al medio ambiente con este proyecto.
A mitigated negative declaration states that the project would not have a significant effect on the environment with the incorporation of proposed mitigation.
Con todo lo que propone este proyecto, queremos decir de que no tenemos ninguna cosa que nos preocupemos del ambiente con todo lo que va a ser incluido con este proyecto.
This does not mean that Caltrans' decision on the project is final. This proposed mitigated negative declaration is subject to change based on comments received from interested agencies and the public.
Esto no quiere decir de que todo lo que estemos mostrando es finalizado. Depende de si recibimos comentarios por todos los que trabajan en el área o tengan comentarios del público.
Technical studies were prepared to study the effects the project may have on the environment in accordance with both federal and state regulations.
Se hicieron estudios federales y estatales para saber de que lo que se propone en este proyecto no va a afectar al medio ambiente.
These technical studies were approved by Caltrans and were completed in coordination with other public agencies, including the State Historic Preservation Office and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Estos documentos fueron hechos por Caltrans y todos los otros departamentos mencionados en esta página.
To obtain a copy of one or more of these technical studies, please email your request to matt.c.fowler@dot.ca.gov. The email is provided in the chat bar.
Para obtener este documento en escrito, por favor, mande un email a Matt Fowler a la dirección que mira en esta página.
This slide shows the list of all resources that were evaluated during the environmental analysis where it was determined that the proposed build alternative would result in no impacts under the National Environmental Policy Act and the California Environmental Quality Act.
Todos estos recursos fueron estudiados para saber que no son afectados por este proyecto. Este listado puede ser obtenido en español si lo requiere. Solo mande una petición y se los traduciré todos.
The draft environmental document provides further explanation as to why the proposed build alternative would have no effects or no impacts on each of these resources.
El estudio ambiental dice con todos los detalles por qué no son afectados estas áreas de medio ambiente con lo que está proponiendo el proyecto.
It was determined that the build alternative would have a less than significant impact to the following resources.
El estudio ambiental dice que todas estas áreas van a ser menos afectadas áreas por el proyecto.
Community character and cohesion, relocations and real property acquisition, utilities and emergency services, traffic and transportation, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, hydrology and floodplain, water quality and stormwater runoff,
el carácter de la comunidad, la propiedad de los dueños del área, la utilidad, tráfico de transportación de peatones y bicicletistas, el de agua y el de tierra y de aire. Todas estas son cosas que no van a ser afectados o menos afectados por el medio ambiente por este proyecto.
geology, soil, seismicity and topography, hazardous waste and materials, air quality, plant species, animal species, and threatened and endangered species.
Otras áreas que no van a ser muy afectadas son el medio ambiente del área, de las plantas, de animales y las especies que están en el listado de así más afectados de esa área.
The following slides describe the potential impacts for some of these resources and the proposed avoidance and minimization measures that would be incorporated.
Las siguientes páginas van a mostrar lo que sí puede ser afectado por este proyecto.
Rehabilitated pavement and improved ride quality would reduce the need for vehicle maintenance for users of a project route.
El mejoramiento del pavimento va a reducir la necesidad de mantener los vehículos.
The service life of the State Route 183, State Route 156 separation bridge would be extended.
El mejorar el puente va a mejorar el largo del tiempo que va a poder funcionar para tránsito.
The limiting of left turn movements at Salinas Street and Harrow Street would reduce potential traffic conflicts and vehicle collisions at these two intersections.
Para limitar el acceso a unas calles va a reducir la posibilidad de conflictos de tráfico.
The gain in queuing and vehicle movement through the extension and widening of the shared through lane and right turn at the northbound interchange with eastbound State Route 156 would reduce the stack of vehicles waiting to move through the signal.
El hacer más ancho las partes de la carretera va a reducir la necesidad de que los carros estén parqueados o estén en espera para poder pasar en esa área.
This would help reduce congestion at the partially controlled intersection with Wood Street.
Esto reducirá la congestión en el área de Wood Street.
The replacement of existing traffic sensor stations with upgraded systems and the installation of a closed-circuit television camera system on the traffic signals at Merritt Street and State Route 156 would improve the collection and reliability of real-time traffic data for traffic management purposes.
Van a mejorar la tecnología en el área de Merritt Street para poder ver la congestión y todo en áreas en vivo y a todo color con esta tecnología por medio de los nuevos aparatos que van a poner.
This would allow for real-time management of changing route conditions and more user choice for highway trip planning.
Esto dejará saber la gente que quiere manejar por esa área en si es poder evitar si está congestionado y puede mejorar las decisiones en qué áreas puede manejar y no, o evitar el área por completo.
Tree removal at select locations would help remedy site distance concerns and help construct improvements.
Van a remover partes de unos árboles para poder mejorar la vista al cruzar con su vehículo.
All of these would combine be the roadway operational effects would be considered less than significant and generally beneficial for the community.
Todos estos mejoramientos no se consideran muy significativos, al contrario, mejorarán el tránsito y todos los movimientos de tráfico en esta área.
Multimodal operations, including walking, bicycle riding, and transit use, would be improved by the build alternative.
Lo que van a hacer en las curvas va a mejorar el acceso de la gente discapacitada y peatones.
The build alternative would improve walkability through the proposed sidewalk, curb ramp, and pedestrian crossing improvements.
Van a mejorar los cruces para los peatones en esa área.
Pedestrian facilities would be designed to comply with the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act where feasible.
Todos estos requisitos que van a hacer y los que van a mejorar van a estar con todo lo que ordena el requisito del Estado.
Bike lanes and painted crosswalks would increase driver awareness of all route users in the roadway, along with the rapid flashing beacon.
Las luces y los colores verdes que van a poner para los bicicletistas van a mejorar que la gente que maneja en esa área pueda ver a los ciclistas.
The build alternative would provide more user choice in trip planning by increasing the convenience and availability of multimodal travel options.
Haciendo todas estas mejoras van a tener oportunidades del público de decidir cómo pueden manejar por esta área, por vehículo, caminar, bicicleta o por tránsito.
Some areas with existing on-street parking would be removed to accommodate the proposed improvements to sidewalks, road shoulders, and other complete streets amenities.
Algunas áreas que ahorita se pueden parquear los vehículos van a ser removidos desafortunadamente porque es necesario para mejorar la oportunidad de que los ciclistas y los peatones puedan tener acceso a la carretera.
In the northbound direction, on-street parking would be removed from Blacky Road to Midway to Monterey Street and from Poole Street to the north of Crane Street.
Al norte van a ser removidos el área de parqueos de Blacky Road a Crane Street y al sur va a ser de Crane Street a Pájaro Street.
On-street parking would be removed in the southbound direction from just north of Crane Street to Rico Street and from Union Street to Pájaro Street.
Como explicado, en el área del sur van a ser removido el área de poder parquear en las calles de Crane Street a Pájaro Street.
In the remaining portions of the project limits, on-street parking would be retained.
En los otros áreas no mencionados de este proyecto todavía van a poder parquear los vehículos.
The build alternative would have a net effect of reducing available on-street parking on Merritt Street by about 39%, with a reduction of approximately 73 spaces out of the existing estimated 188 spaces.
La reducción del área donde se va a parquear en la calle Mary Street va a bajar de 73 espacios y aproximadamente 73 espacios van a ser removidos de los 188 espacios.
The available on-street parking areas would be reduced for several reasons.
El no poder parquear en esta área van a ser por muchas razones.
There are locations along the project route where the curb is not marked or painted red, as it should be, indicating no parking.
Hay áreas en Mary Street que no tienen la pintura roja donde deberían de tener, donde dice que no se puede parquear vehículos.
Because the project would rebuild bus stops, driveway tie-ins, and sidewalk features, some existing parking areas would need to be removed as a result.
Porque va a haber muchas mejoras de tránsito y de peatones, algunas áreas donde parquean los vehículos van a tener que ser removidos.
And as a multimodal project, the build alternative emphasizes bicycle and pedestrian facilities and vehicular access improvements.
Y por el motivo de querer mejorar el acceso de peatones y bicicletistas y la congestión de vehículos, es necesario remover estas áreas de parqueo.
Therefore, where the shoulder would be less than 8 feet wide to accommodate a bicycle lane and standard sidewalks, parking would need to be restricted and denoted with a red curb and/or no parking sign.
En el área que es menos de 8 pies va a ser restringido para que pueda pasar los bicicletistas.
Temporary traffic control would be needed for the project.
Va a haber temporalmente excesos de tráfico durante la construcción de este proyecto.
Construction of the build alternative would require about 280 days over a staged 2-year construction.
La necesidad de hacer esta construcción va a durar 280 días durante 2 años.
A public outreach campaign would occur during construction to inform motorists of delays and encourage traffic to avoid the project area.
Antes de comenzar la construcción de este proyecto, le dejaremos saber a toda la gente que vive en esa área para que estén en alerta.
Construction would seek to avoid and minimize impacts to key community events such as the Artichoke Festival.
La construcción de este proyecto tratará de no afectar otras cosas que hagan la comunidad como el evento de Artichoke.
Alternative bicycle and pedestrian pathways would be developed where possible. Construction staging would use small work areas which be proportionally sized to minimize motorist delays, maximize public access to businesses and residences, and incrementally progress through the project limits.
Van a haber otras opciones para que no pare el tráfico de vehículos o de peatones o de bicicletistas. Van a haber otras opciones para que puedan todavía hacer acceso a esta área.
Work areas would be limited to half of the roadway at a time to allow room for two-way traffic flow and to allow only the necessary space needed to complete the proposed activities.
Solo vamos a ocupar el área necesaria para construir lo que es requerido y vamos a tratar de que haya movimiento de tráfico durante estemos construyendo.
When possible, activities would be coordinated to complete all proposed construction within the work area simultaneously or shortly thereafter before moving to another location.
Trataremos de terminar todo el mejoramiento en esa área antes de movernos a otro área sin poder parar tráfico para que todo el movimiento de tráfico y peatones bicicletistas continúe.
Near the work areas, temporary closure of lanes and on-street parking along affected portions of Merritt Street and cross streets would result.
Van a haber necesidad de que a veces vamos a tener que cerrar algunas carreteras para poder construir en el área.
Temporary detours are not proposed because all traffic is expected to remain on the existing alignment during construction. Temporary pedestrian and bicycle pathways through and around work areas would be provided as needed during construction.
Si el acceso va a ser cerrado, van a dar otras opciones para que pueda llegar a su destino para todos los bicicletistas, peatones y vehículos.
Community and agency input would be sought on maintaining a pedestrian, bicycle, and transit bus stop access during the project construction phase.
Can you repeat that, Michael?
Community and agency input would be sought on maintaining a pedestrian, bicycle, and transit bus stop access during the project construction phase.
Vamos a preguntarle a la comunidad y a todas las otras agencias de transportación para poder mantener acceso a todos los vehículos bicicletistas y el tránsito en esta área.
Caltrans resident engineer would notify and coordinate with regional emergency service providers during construction-related activities to ensure that project activities would not restrict or prevent access within the area.
El ingeniero residente de este proyecto va a mantener informado a toda la comunidad para poder evitar que el acceso sea restringido.
Access for fire, paramedic, and other emergency services vehicles through the project limits would be enabled through controlled work zones by the project's construction contractor.
El acceso de vehículos de emergencia siempre van a ser disponibles, pero van a ser controlados por la gente que está haciendo las mejoras en esa área, pero sí va a haber acceso para todos los vehículos de emergencia.
Additionally, the resident engineer would coordinate with the local transit provider to temporarily relocate bus stops as needed and provide information in advance of construction-related activities to allow for route rescheduling.
El ingeniero residente va a asegurarse de que las áreas de tránsito que utiliza la gente sean movidos a un área donde puedan continuar usándolos.
Businesses and residences with single driveway access may have access reduced for a short time while the highway, shoulder, sidewalk, and walkway areas are under construction.
Las áreas donde tienen los dueños de negocios con entrada de vehículos a veces van a ser temporalmente afectados mientras están trabajando en esa área del proyecto.
Temporary driveway closures are proposed at each driveway as approaches are rebuilt for roadway paving activities and sidewalk improvements.
Los accesos de esos negocios van a ser restringidos cuando van a hacer los mejoramientos, no antes.
Caltrans would coordinate with affected businesses and residential property owners during construction to limit the duration and effects of closure.
Caltrans va a hablar con la gente de los negocios para asegurarse de limitar, para evitar que el acceso al negocio no sea extendido por largo tiempo y trabajar con ellos para que ellos todavía puedan tener su negocio disponible al público.
Public awareness would be provided during construction activities during various methods such as public media outlets, social media, the project website, and electronic message signage on the project route.
Vamos a tratar de mantener informado al público por diferentes medios, por las páginas sociales, por el internet, por máquinas con información en el área y la opción para mantener a todos los que estén en esa área informados de lo que está pasando sobre el proyecto.
The Caltrans standard specifications require that construction operations present the least possible obstruction and inconvenience to the public.
Nosotros somos requeridos de que no afectemos al público, que los afectemos lo menos posible durante que el proyecto esté siendo construido.
The build alternative would not require full acquisition of any properties. However, it would require permanent acquisition of minor portions or small slivers, corner sections of an estimated 34 properties out of the 112 properties that are next to the project limits.
Este proyecto requiere de que no va a requerir que nosotros seamos dueños de áreas de negocios que existen ahorita, pero sí va a requerir que de 34 lugares en esta área van a ser pequeñas áreas, esquinas que vamos a tener que necesitar acceso y ser dueños en orden de mejorar esa área. De los 112 áreas, 34 van a ser afectados.
The acquisition amounts would be relatively minor, ranging from 0.02% to 8.53% of individual parcels. Most of the affected parcels would be affected by less than 1% permanent acquisition.
Las áreas que van a ser afectados son muy mínimas, es de 0.02% a 8.53%. En total del área, menos de 1% pueden ser afectados.
No relocations of businesses or residences would be required.
No va a ser necesario mover a los negocios o a los que viven en esa área.
Acquisitions would be necessary to allow the widening of the road shoulders and sidewalks to meet highway design standards and ensure compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act where feasible.
Todas las mejoras a peatones van a ser, depende de todos los requisitos del ADA que nos requiere por el Estado.
Property acquisition is also necessary to construct sidewalks, curb ramps, and standard driveways with continuous walkways behind them.
Can you repeat that, Michael?
Property acquisition is also necessary to construct sidewalk, curb ramps, and standard driveways with continuous walkways behind them.
Algunas áreas van a ser requeridos de que nosotros obtengamos la propiedad en orden de mejorar el área para los peatones.
For the build alternative, no displacements and relocations are expected.
No va a ser necesario mover a ninguno.
In addition to the permanent acquisition of minor portions of properties, construction of the proposed improvements would require temporary construction easements and permits to enter and construct at certain properties next to the project limits.
Vamos a tener que obtener requisitos en orden de poder hacer unos mejoramientos en el área que no son propiedad de nosotros.
These easements and permits will be required to allow Caltrans and its contractors to work within non-state properties to construct and reconstruct driveways, sidewalks, curbs, gutters, curb returns, and other infrastructural improvements.
Nosotros trataremos de mejorar todas las áreas para los peatones en esa área donde caminan.
It is expected that temporary construction easements and/or permits to enter and construct would be required for 81 parcels, or about 72% of the 112 properties next to the project route during the construction phases.
Va a ser necesario que nosotros tengamos la oportunidad de entrar a 81 propiedades en el área para construir los mejoramientos de este proyecto.
The majority of the 81 parcels, about 86%, would have less than 10% of the property affected by the easements and permits to construct.
Ahorita está explicando que un 86% vamos a necesitar dar información y permiso para tener acceso de mejorar este proyecto.
And no avoidance and minimization measures or compensatory mitigation measures that go above and beyond what is required by the Uniform Act and/or the Caltrans Relocation Assistance Program will be necessary.
Por ahorita no miramos necesario que necesitamos adquirir la uniformidad de relocación de asistencia del 1970 por este proyecto no va a aplicar.
Caltrans standard procedures in accordance with the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Act of 1970 would be implemented to compensate property owners with fair market value for the portion of their property that would be temporarily used or permanently acquired for construction of the build alternative improvements.
Si es necesario, utilizaremos esta asistencia de uniforme de relocación para el proyecto.
The Uniform Act establishes uniform and equitable procedures for land acquisition. Owners of private property would have federal and state constitutional guarantees that their property would not be taken or damaged for public use unless they first receive just compensation.
Si es necesario obtener permiso de un área para que nosotros seamos dueños, serían pagados justamente y no se le quitarían sin dar antes un pago por esa propiedad.
And where property acquisitions are proposed, portions of properties, in the case of the build alternative, Caltrans would follow provisions of the Uniform Act as amended and in conformance with all the applicable regulations.
Queremos de que se asegure de que todos estos requisitos son tomados en consideración en este proyecto.
All real property to be acquired would be appraised to determine its fair market value, and an offer of just compensation, not less than the approved appraisal, would be made to each affected property owner.
Se le pagará a cualquier propietario que es necesario de tomar uso de su propiedad el justo precio de la localización.
The project
Thank you, Michael. The project would have a less than significant impact on special status plant and animal species.
Este proyecto tendría un objetivo menos significativo para todos los animales que mencionados en esta página.
Project area does not include habitat for Southern California coast steelhead, Central Coast steelhead, or aquatic habitat for the California red-legged frog.
Este proyecto no observa de que no va a afectar a estas a la rana o al steelhead que están ahorita en la página.
No aquatic habitat was present, nor were species observed during surveys.
Mientras hicimos estudios en el área, ninguno de estos animales fueron observados.
No avoidance or minimization measures are required for this.
No se requiere ningún otro esfuerzo después de esto.
Environmental studies with less than significant impacts with mitigation incorporated include visual, cultural, and noise and vibration.
Los estudios hechos para este proyecto fueron visuales, culturales y de ruido.
There are two built visual resources have less than significant impact with mitigation incorporated.
Para los efectos visuales que fueron estudiados, no van a ser muy afectados por este proyecto.
Environmental consequences include changes to public viewpoints, designated state scenic highway, State Highway 156.
Las cosas que fueron consideradas son vistas para el público y las áreas que son designadas de área cínico en la ruta 156.
Removal of street trees or vegetation.
El mover o eliminar árboles de la calle o vegetación.
Proposed decorative, low maintenance hardscaping, shade trees, tree gates, guards and root barriers, water-wise landscaping areas, decorative paving elements, and street furniture.
Todo lo que está propuesto es de mantenimiento bajo, que no va a requerir mucho mantenimiento, que van a ser árboles, cosas de agua, el pavimento y lugares donde sentarse para el público.
There are proposed decorative paving elements and curb extensions and sidewalks, approved custom colored detectable warning panels and curb ramps, decorative shields, and warm temperature street lights are proposed to replace existing street lights in the downtown core.
Hay otros requisitos que fueron sugeridos por este proyecto y son elementos para las peatones de luz en el área y mejoramiento de las esquinas.
There is a potential for effects from an over-engineered and urbanized appearance.
What was that again, Brandy?
There's potential for substantial effects from an over-engineered and urbanized appearance.
Lo que estamos evitando de que haya muchos diseños demasiados de ingeniería o de muchos diseños de ciudades así muy grandes.
There are several proposed avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures associated with visual impacts.
Hay partes del proyecto donde tenemos que evitar o minimar las mitigaciones de este proyecto.
Those include preserving existing vegetation, site restoration of construction areas, aesthetic design approval for project elements.
Estos quieren ver las áreas de vegetación donde es disponible entre construir algunas áreas y el lugar estético de elementos del proyecto.
Safety and spatial limitations and maintenance requirements, and consistency with the Castroville Community Plan, Caltrans Complete Streets Plan, and the California Coastal Act.
Todas estas consideraciones fueron obtenidos por el Castroville Community Plan y otros estudios del área.
The project team will include consideration of local community input, as well as street tree placement within the corridor.
Hemos tenido comunicación con la comunidad y hemos oído de lo que requieren en esta área y también de lo que los requeridos del el área para los árboles.
There are two built historic resources and an archaeological site within the project limits that have been determined to be eligible for inclusion in the National Historic Register of Historic Places.
Se han encontrado dos edificios que pueden ser agregados al registro histórico.
Proposed avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures include documentation of pre-construction and post-construction conditions.
Documentación de antes de empezar la construcción y después van a ser obtenidos para asegurarse de que los edificios no sean afectados.
Restrictions to specific equipment such as jackhammer and vibratory roller.
Algunos cosas no van a poder ser utilizados en el área de construcción para evitar daño a los edificios.
A Section 4F de minimis determination was made, which means that the project would not result in adverse impacts after taking into account the avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures.
Todo esto fue obtenido y estudiado para evitar que esto sea afectado durante el proyecto.
The project includes minor horizontal widening of the right-of-way to provide more within the project limits to provide more consistent widths for roadway shoulders, bicycle lanes, and sidewalks.
I don't see that in the slide. Can you repeat that, please?
Okay. Says that the project includes minor horizontal widening of the right-of-way of the highway within the project limits to provide more consistent widths for road, shoulders, bike lanes, and sidewalks.
Algunas de estas áreas van a tener que ser hecho más anchas para poder estar con todos los requisitos para el tráfico que pasa por esta área.
However, the project would not involve the realignment of travel lanes. It would not bring vehicles closer to sensitive receptors near Merritt Street.
Este proyecto no causará que el tráfico esté más cerca de una de estas áreas durante el corredor de los edificios.
Therefore,
Al contrario, dará más espacio.
Therefore, no long-term noise abatement measures are necessary for the implementation of the build alternative.
Por ese motivo, no hay requisitos más que debemos de cumplir en esa área ya que no van a ser afectados.
Since short-term increases in noise and vibrations from construction activities are anticipated.
Por poco tiempo ha sido afectados algunas áreas por el ruido de las vibraciones cuando construyen en esa área.
Nighttime work is proposed.
Estamos recomendando que trabajen por la noche.
Caltrans standard specifications require the control and monitoring of construction noise not to exceed 86 A-weighted decibels at 50 feet from the work site.
Por los requisitos que tiene Caltrans, requiere que no exceda 86 decibelios en el área de trabajo durante la hora de 9 p.m. a 6 a.m. para que la gente que vive en el área no sean afectados.
Proposed avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures include equipment shielding, equipment location, and equipment noise abatement.
Para minimizar todos los efectos de este proyecto, van a recomendar que unas áreas sean cubiertos y que el ruido sea menos mientras están trabajando.
Nighttime construction noise restrictions, public noticing, and procedures to responding for noise complaints.
Van a haber restricciones durante la noche, van a haber información hacia el público y van a proceder, y si hay la gente va a poder dar quejas si hay mucho ruido.
Following the public comment period, Caltrans will prepare the final environmental document.
Vamos ahorita a terminar el medio ambiente, el estudio, y todos los comentarios pueden ser sugeridos o dados antes de junio 11 del 2021.
Your statements and comments will be given full consideration and will be addressed in the final environmental document.
Todos sus comentarios le van a dar respuestas y van a estar documentados en el documento final ambiental.
Comments can be received until June 11th, 2021.
Todos los comentarios pueden ser recibidos hasta el junio 11.
Submit your comments in writing via email or the postal service. Those addresses can be found in the chat bar.
Puede mandar todos sus comentarios por vía email o por el correo a estas áreas que aparecen en la página.
Based on the studies thus far, the environmental investigations indicate that this project would not result in significant impacts on the quality of human or natural environment with the proposed avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures incorporated.
Después de haber hecho el estudio ambiental, queremos informarle al público que no hay los resultados, que los resultados ambientales quieren decir que no sean muy afectados por esta área, depende del proyecto que estamos proponiendo.
That concludes our presentation of the environmental review.
Esto
We
concluye la
realize that this is a
presentación.
lot of Go ahead.
Esto concluye la presentación del medio ambiental, el estudio que se ha hecho por este proyecto.
We realize this is a lot of information, so if you would like to refer to a slide during the question and answer session, just ask and we will accommodate your request.
Es mucha información que hemos dado y perdone de antemano si mi traducción durante la presentación no fue completa, pero si tiene alguna pregunta, por favor, déjenos saber qué página está preguntando para poder subirla y saber su pregunta y poder asegurarnos de que podamos responder a cualquier pregunta que tenga.
We have some basic housekeeping that we're going to go over for the question and answer session.
Hay algunas cosas que tenemos que mencionar antes de las preguntas.
Please use the raise hand feature.
Por favor, de usar la mano para que está a la par de su nombre si quiere preguntar algo.
The host will unmute you and call your name and ask you to ask your question.
La presentadora va a darle la oportunidad para que hable y pueda hacer su pregunta.
If you are on the phone, please dial **3 to raise your hand.
Si está en el teléfono, puede poner el asterisco y el número 3 para hacer una pregunta.
You can also submit questions in the chat bar.
También puede escribir sus preguntas en el vía chat.
Please limit your questions to 5 minutes.
Por favor, limite sus preguntas a 5 minutos. And Brandy, do I have to translate everybody's questions, or can that just be on the record and translate it later?
Yeah, let's do that on the record. Could you please announce that to the audience?
Todas las preguntas que van a hacer ahorita las vamos a traducir por escrito y vamos a tenerlas disponibles en la página de internet, ya que hay unas cosas que no voy a poder traducir. Pero si tiene preguntas, por favor, levante la mano y yo podré traducir por usted, pero las otras preguntas van a ser escritas a otro tiempo.
Katrina, do we have anybody who has their hand raised or a question in the chat bar?
Not yet, but anyone is free to raise their hand or enter a question in the chat box now. Catherine has a question. Catherine, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
I just wonder why they don't just bypass Castroville and use all that money to do that instead of upsetting Castroville for 2 years, because that's what it's going to do for the inside roads. They're going to be going down those to avoid going on Merritt, and it still would be nice if we had a bypass. That's
Thank
all.
you, Catherine, for your question. I know that from a long-term standpoint, there were many options to look at how to work with regional traffic in the area. That a bypass has been discussed in the past. However, at this time, that's not a local regional priority. And so we're going to go ahead. Caltrans still wants to maintain Highway 183 and 156. And this is an investment into the community. And we recognize that there will be disruption during construction, as there would if there was any construction in your community. And so we'll continue to work with the public to try and minimize those delays, minimize the disruption, but it is an incredible amount of investment into your community in order to make improvements to your main street.
Well, yeah, but I know everybody's going to be, I live on McDougal, which is 1 block in, and I know everybody's going to be using my street instead of Merritt to bypass it during the construction. And that puts a lot of traffic on my street. It already has a lot, but puts a lot more.
Yes, thank you. That is, you know, there will be disruption during construction, and like I said, we'll try and do everything we can. But one thing that we are trying to, oh, go ahead.
As long as they don't deter cars onto my street, I'd appreciate it. That would be nice.
What we're going to do during the design phase is we're going to be doing a special value analysis study that's going to be focusing specifically on construction during the construction period. And one of the main things that we want to do is partner with Monterey County, TAMC, and the community of Castroville to kind of figure out what is the best staging of construction. And so we'll be conducting that study next in our design period. And we're going to be looking at a lot of different features of the value analysis to kind of define that.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Do we have any other raised hands or questions in the chat bar?
We have a couple more with their raised hands. Albert Gutierrez, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Okay. Yes. So I have a couple of questions and concerns. One of them would be the bicycle lane for pedestrians that want to ride their bikes. This being an intersection and people speeding down at high rates of speed and not having a nice brand new street where people are gonna hit the the gas pedal. Um, is there? I know in Monterey, if you guys look at Monterey, Seaside Monterey, California, they installed a pedestrian bicycle lane in between the streets, and it has a railing on both sides. It has a good, I would say, 4 or 5 feet of cement, where people can uh, get from point A to point B. And this is Fremont Street, getting out of Seaside, going towards Monterey and exiting, the last part of Seaside towards Monterey and Monterey, California. Like I said, my concern would be, with cars speeding down, big semi trucks coming down, and me trying to get from point A to point B, because, I try to use my bicycle more. But if I wanted to use these lanes, what kind of protection am I going to have from not getting ran over and getting killed? That's one. Two, last time we discussed this, and I don't know how much you guys have in saying this, but we have that new satellite campus. I don't know if it's Hartnell or NPC. How are students going to cross, from one side of the street to the other side, having this campus on there, and then people accessing the school? I mentioned something about trying to put a light on that street. Is there any feedback or input as far as what we can do for that?
So during our last public meeting, one of the things that we did talk about was, vehicles that are speeding through the corridor. And one of the design features that we talked about this evening, although not in a great amount of detail, are the bulb outs. And the bulb outs kind of serve two purposes from a pedestrian standpoint by shortening the crossing distance from one side of the street to the other. But they also serve as a visual cue that you're coming into intersections where people might be crossing. And so it serves like a traffic calming to slow folks down. And so that is one feature, but you also spoke to the kind of the protected bike lanes that you see in a lot of, in some areas. And you generally see those when you have a lot more right of way. In our case, the highway or the roadway is not wide enough to accommodate both the 2 lanes of traffic, the turn lane, as well as parking. And so you notice that some of the parking is lost because we have sections of the roadway that are narrow. And so that's, that bicycle lane is would not have enough room for the protected bicycle lane like what you're talking about. However, some of the other features will help with traffic calming to hopefully slow people down. And I don't know, Steve, if you want to add anything to that. You might have to unmute yourself.
I just also feel that if you guys do put those bicycle lanes, how are you going to put them? You're going to invest money in designing them and putting them, and I don't think nobody's going to use them. As a matter of fact, today there was a major accident, going towards 156 North on right up from the bridge from Burger King. Car was trying to make a left going into the freeway, and somebody was coming down Merritt, and they both went head on. This was around 4 o'clock today. There was a lot of traffic. So, like I said, there's a lot of accidents in Merritt Street, and there is a lot of cars going up and down. We got all the people coming from Watsonville, Santa Cruz, cutting through here, going to Salinas, and vice versa. People coming from Salinas, crossing back home, and you got all these semi trucks that are in and out all day long. So it is a little bit of a scare, to be honest, for anybody to say, you know what, I'm going to use this bicycle lane for me to get from point A to point B. So it's just it's a safety concern for pedestrians.
That's understood. And, one thing that we do want to point out is that we've worked with the Castroville Community Plan. And one of the items that was identified in that planning effort was to improve bicycle facilities. And so we are being consistent with that. I think there is a desire to improve not only pedestrian movements and bicycle movements, but as well as transit movements. And so having a multimodal corridor in your community is something that has previously been a priority for the community of Castroville. So we're just we are being consistent with that. And we are designing the project in such a way to ensure that there's improvements not only from an operational standpoint, but also a safety standpoint.
Okay. And what about the light, another light over there exiting Castroville, where they have the new satellite
Like
school?
a signal?
Yeah, I mean, you're
Yeah,
gonna put
so-
crosswalks, but I don't think crosswalks work that much on Merritt. You know, I mean, even if you're trying to use your car to get on Merritt, you're gonna have to wait there a long time because people won't stop and people won't slow down when you're in a vehicle. I could
Yeah,
just
so-
imagine people crossing the street.
So one of the things that we've been discussing, it's not proposed with this project, but we are in conversations with some of the local agencies, is to look at a permanent solution at Washington Street. And so it's not included as part of this project, but there's ongoing conversations to look at how to make improvements at Washington Street right next to the Hartnell College entrance. And so some of those things include looking at, intersection improvements such as a roundabout and some of those features. And so it's an ongoing conversation that we're having. This project is focusing largely on the pavement rehabilitation, the bridge, the interchange improvements to the bridge, as well as the pedestrian, bicycle, and transit improvements. And so it is something that we were seeking grant funds previously. It's been raised at several meetings. And so it's something that we're continuing to work with the locals to see if we can put something forward as we, so specifically at Washington Street, because not only do you have Hartnell College, but we recognize that it's also, you have your middle school, a lot of schools on that northern end of town. So it's an ongoing conversation that we're having with your local agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Katrina, do you have any other folks in the chat or the with raised hands?
Yes, I have, I believe, 2 more. We're going to go ahead and go with Linda. And I'm going to unmute you right now. And you're all set, Linda?
Hi. Thank you. I put a couple of comments in the Q&A. I guess you're not looking at that.
I didn't see any come through, so go ahead and ask them here if you don't mind.
I submitted a couple of things, but one, the community plan for Castroville is supposed to be going through a nexus study because there were so many things put into that old community plan that were ridiculous and have astronomical fees attached to it, which makes developing even infill lots in this town darn near impossible. So that's one issue, that you're basing everything off of the Castroville community plan, which should be getting re-looked at. 2, a number of years ago, trees were put in up and down Merritt Street as a beautification thing. Granted, half of those trees are gone these days, but the trees that are there, am I to understand that you're going to take those trees out and then go back in with other trees? That seems ridiculous waste of money, which tends to be how things go. Taking parking off of Merritt Street is a Chris idea. We don't have enough parking around this town, considering we have people that allow multiple families living in their households. We're just going to have, it's just going to exacerbate the already lacking parking situation that we have all around town. And is this project taking into consideration the other project where 156 is going to have a tie-in to Blacky Road?
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly read those questions back. So you had a question about, a statement about the nexus study with Castroville, and then you had a question specifically about the trees, as well as the tie-in of 156 into Blacky Road. And then you have the statement about the parking. So I'm going to allow Corby to field the question about the trees. She's our landscape architect. Go ahead, Corby.
Okay.
Hi, Linda. The thing is, yes, so with the trees that are out there are all going to get removed because we need the room in order to put the new, better sidewalks in. One thing that you want to think about with the trees is they serve a lot of purposes. One is beautification, but they also shade the pavement, which makes things last longer. They bring a lot of beauty to the downtown, which is good for economic vitality. And they also serve as a visual cue to get people to slow down. The more that roadway starts to feel more pedestrian scale, the more you're going to get that traffic slowdown that the previous caller was saying is a concern for bicycle riders. So all these things work together to bring a better livability to the downtown street, but also to meet safety concerns and to meet climate change and greenhouse gas reduction goals that we all have. So I wouldn't think of the trees as just trees, because they have a lot of really beneficial functions when combined with all these other ingredients. And for the cost of the trees is very low for a super high benefit. Some of the trees that didn't do well or you know are not looking great, we're going to work really hard to make a better species selection that has the hardiness that we need to survive in a more urban environment. Does that sort of help answer your tree question?
Well, yeah, that sort of answers it. So the ones that are doing well, are those going to be left in place, or those are going to be taken out? I mean, this is all taxpayers' money that just keeps going around in circles. And then the other concern I have with that whole making Merritt Street more pedestrian is fine and dandy, except for the fact that it is still a state highway. So you're trying to make a state highway a pedestrian.
Well,
path.
and we have a lot of state highways that we call highways that are main streets. So they are like Merritt Street through a community. And so they function both for the community and as a highway. So yes, that can lead to some conflicts. But again, anything we can do to make that road safer by adding elements to it, that's money well spent, right? Because that's lives, that's injuries that don't happen because we make these improvements. And again, the long-term goals for Caltrans are really to increase bike ridership and pedestrian walking, getting more people out of their cars.
That's the goal of Caltrans, but that's not necessarily the goal of the individual person.
Correct. But the overall goals for the state are to bring more livability to communities. So that is part of our goal, and we're certainly very conscious of cost and keeping the cost down and making sure that the money is well spent, for sure. We're very conscious of that.
It seems to me it would be better serve the community to have the pedestrian aspect of access around town, not on the main drag that has, I don't know how many thousands of cars going through it every day, since it is the only way to get from Santa Cruz to Salinas area.
Well, again, you have right-of-way issues, and it becomes very expensive to go off the highway right-of-way into private right-of-way as far as costs. So
I'm not talking about private right-of-way. Why not put a bike path on a more pedestrian type of surface street rather on the highway?
Linda, I think that one of the things that we can talk about related to pedestrian access is that it is a corridor that's currently being used by pedestrians. And so that's something that we're looking to improve. One of your other questions had to do with the connection of the 156 and how it ties into Blacky Road. There is a regional project that's being done in partnership with TAMC and Caltrans for the Castroville Boulevard, which is not within our project limits, but it is a regional project that's being done to connect that to the 156. So it doesn't quite tie into our project limits, but it is something that is happening in partnership with the Transportation Agency of Monterey County. And then you did mention the Nexus study for the Castroville plan. Because this is being funded by state dollars, that Nexus plan is specific for traffic impact fees related to capital improvements in Monterey County. And so those dollars aren't dollars that necessarily Caltrans have any control over. This is being funded through our state highway and maintenance program. It's called the SHOP. And so it's a different pot of money, and it's specifically for improving safety operations and maintenance within that corridor, which includes, making these pedestrian.
Okay, I understand that concept. I understand that concept, but you're basing your information off the Castroville community plan, which is supposed to be being revisited by the county. And so, in one of your slides, you referenced the Castroville community plan that you are tying into all of these pie in the sky concepts that were put into the Castroville community plan that should never have been put in there in the first place, that we are paying dearly for in this town, that is supposed to be revamped from the county, which I don't know if they've even started their nexus study, which was supposed to have been started about 2 years ago. Being that the nexus study should take about 2 years, should be about done by now. But your presentation tonight is talking about fitting the Castroville community plan, which should be tossed into a burn pile and incinerated. Should have done a long time ago.
Well, and one thing that we continue to do is coordinate with Monterey County. And so as planning documents change, we are working on what has been adopted up to this point. But as we continue to move forward into the design of the project, we will continue to coordinate with the county and make updates related to that. When I refer to the Castroville community plan, in some ways it's more related to design guidelines and whatnot for the community character.
Which is what needs to go away, because they are pie in the sky design guidelines that are just absolutely ridiculous. So you might want to ask the county where they are on the nexus study, so that you're actually getting information that might be more current. Or if they're not doing their nexus study, tell them they need to get their ass in gear and get it done.
Okay, and we'll continue to work with them on that. So Katrina, can we get to the next person on the list? And I would say, Linda, when you have time, definitely make your questions. Anybody that's on the line tonight, we are recording the questions, but if you want to also put them in writing for the purposes of the environmental document record, please do so. We'll flash the address and email information at the end of the meeting. And so I just want to put that reminder out there that we are collecting these comments, but we would also like to receive them as a hard copy as well from you. Katrina, do we have anybody else on the line for questions?
Yes, we have 2 more. Ramon, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to hear from the community and for the state for willing to invest over $20 million in the on the Merritt Street in that area there. I think it's going to be an incredible enhancement in terms of the improvements on the road and on the sidewalks, and also for pedestrians and for bicyclists. I would like to see a push button crosswalk over by Washington Street where the new Cardinal College is being built. And would also like to see if there's any other elements that could be added, whether it's extending the sidewalk or do more bulbs to slow down traffic through Merritt.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we did look at the bulb outs, and we have several locations throughout the corridor. One of the things that we have to take into consideration, as I mentioned previously, was that there are sections that are narrow, and we need to make sure that we can still accommodate the vehicular traffic out there. And so we did look at all of the intersections and identified the best locations for those bulb outs. And so that's something that we heard from our last meeting that we had with you all in August, and we wanted to make sure that we incorporated your input from that previous meeting.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to add, I lived in Wattsville for many years. That Main Street is a highway. So is the other corridor that takes you out to the fairgrounds. We have 156 and 129 to go through there. And I think any effort that we could make to enhance the community is great. It's a great investment in the community. And I appreciate Supervisor Phillips' effort and the CAMC's efforts also in improving that area there.
All right, well, thank you very much. Katrina, do we have any other questions in the chat or folks with their hands raised?
I don't. We have
I don't know.
Jordan who has a question, who has his hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Jordan.
Okay, great. Hello, Jordan.
Hi, guys. Thank you again for your time in this presentation. I appreciate all the information that you shared. Obviously, I think one of the challenges in this community is a lot of folks don't quite understand the different agencies and their functions. And so there is a lot of frustration within the community. A lot of it stems from misunderstanding or misinformation. So whenever, obviously this is a state level project and most folks are dealing with it from a Castroville town perspective, not understanding how the state agencies work. So I would hope maybe that there'd be more collaboration locally to disseminate the information, whether it's through social media, through, flyers in person. Obviously with COVID, that has presented challenges, but hopefully moving forward, we can have more of an in-person kind of grassroots connection, because I'm relatively tech savvy and I barely found out about this event, and I struggled to even get logged into this event. And even though I appreciate the Spanish translation, there was no Spanish promotion. And even the English promotion was very limited. And again, as someone who's tech savvy, I had a lot of challenges using this WebEx system. So I'm wondering, will there be an in-person component, or can we stream this to social media like Facebook or something like that?
So thank you. We recognize that with COVID and the inability to have in-person meetings, we lose a lot. Tonight, the length of tonight's meeting was unusually long because of the Spanish translation, but something that we do want to make sure that we do in the next phases of the project when we get into design is up to this point, we have been partnering with some of the other agencies, but we also want to go a little bit further when we get into things like design details and whatnot later on in project design. And so there'll be a lot of opportunity in the future to get some more information out, whether it be through the Castroville CSD. We've been partnering with the CSD to help get information out. We don't use Facebook as much, but that's definitely a good suggestion. And so typically we use those more from a standpoint of just getting meeting information out. However, if we have the opportunity, in the previous town hall, we had some surveys that we did. And so we got that information out, through some of our partner agencies, as well as on Facebook and then on our website. And so, in this world of COVID, it is clunky when it comes to having not only Spanish translation and English at the same time. And it's something that we're having to learn from, but we do appreciate your patience.
Sure.
And we will continue to partner with your local agencies. And like we have Supervisor Phillips who's been helping. Absolutely. And he's been a really good person to help guide us in some ways to outreaching with certain groups.
I recommend, stronger relationship with the county, with the local Rec and Park District, also with the school district, because they disseminate information to thousands of students and their families weekly. And this project will affect Castroville Elementary as well as North County Middle School. And so, it is a challenge, obviously, but I think local businesses, faith community, just really making a stronger effort to get the word out in a way that people can understand and connect with. Because I'll tell you right now, like I said, I am a tech savvy millennial and I struggled to get on this meeting, and it shouldn't be that difficult to get this information. So that's just my 2 cents, but thank you for your time.
Input. Yeah, thank you. Katrina, do we have more questions? You might
Linda
be
made a
muted, Katrina.
comment in the Q&A that says the bulb outs take out more parking. I don't know if that was her comment from before. If anyone wanted to kind of answer that.
Dave, did you want to handle that one? So yes, you're right. Go ahead, Steve. It looks like you said you may have to unmute yourself, or I can unmute you. Katrina, are you able to unmute Steve? Okay, Steve, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Katrina. Linda, one of the things that is affecting parking today in this proposal is the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices is directing us to put 25 feet of no parking on the corners. And as we put the bulb outs tight to the corner, it actually has an overlapping effect so that it doesn't take out additional or excessive amounts of parking in the creation of the bulb out. It is a bit more, but when it's within that 25-foot area, which some of them are, I can't speak in broad terms, but it doesn't have as a significant effect as it would not otherwise. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, great.
One more person. Josh, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for this this outreach, and any comments or input, concerns anybody has, please feel free to contact us at Supervisor Phillips's office. I've been listening to this whole meeting. I've been taking notes on some of the comments, and Supervisor Phillips has been on top of this, and we try to do the outreach the way that we typically do through Facebook and through the various organizations that we had. So if you have any specific methods that you would like us to do outreach in the future, by all means, let our office know. But I just want to thank you, Brandy, and all for doing this and this project, and for the communities. When this idea first came to us, I remember thinking, wow, this is great. But Supervisor Phillips said, this is great, but the comments that people have about Castroville are not Merritt Street. It's some of our side streets, and we have so many things going on in Castroville. But I think this, Caltrans is doing a great job in doing their due diligence, getting input, and it's going to be a hassle, to say the least, for the town. But we hope that this is going to be a safer drive for everybody. Just if any specific input, please feel free to call us at our office. We're happy to listen. So thank you to everybody, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you, Josh. Katrina, it looks like we might have another couple of questions in the raised hands.
Yes, we have Grant. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now, Grant.
Thank you, everyone. Grant Leonard with the North County Park and Rec District, and formerly with TAMC. So I apologize, I had to step away from the meeting for a little bit to spend some time with the kiddos, so this might have been raised already. But just thinking that 183 is also so much of a regional connection that we're going to have to do some outreach to our friends and up north of us in Castro or in Watsonville who might be commuting through in Santa Cruz County, and then also for the folks in Salinas who travel through. So we're going to need to figure out a good way to outreach to those commuter communities. And then also in general, just want to thank everyone for the continued commitment to this project, for the state for investing in our community, and the county and TAMC for working on it. I think we all work together, and we can get the outreach improved as this project goes on, and keep working at it and keep having these great community meetings. So look forward to partnering with you as we get this project into design and then construction. And of course, really looking forward to the improved Merritt Street through town. Thanks.
Yeah, and I just want to comment that, one of the things that we talked about earlier was public outreach during construction. TAMC has a really great model with their cone zone for projects on some of our other highways. And so we will partner with TAMC as well as the county. But one of the things that we're interested in doing is a specific public outreach for this project when it gets to construction. And so like Josh said and Grant said, if you have community group website, web pages, whether it's next door, I took down notes of the schools, and some of the other ways where we could outreach, let us know. you know, shoot me an email, shoot one of the folks on the question or the contact list an email, and give us some of that input, because that will really help us later on when we're trying to get the word out during construction. And so that'll be something that, you know, we want to make sure that we're partnering with the business community of Castroville as well, just because we know that we have a lot of businesses that are along 183. And so getting connected to the businesses and the residences as well as the schools is going to be really important when we get into construction. Katrina, do we have any more questions or raise hands? I think that Ramon may have popped another hand up, but I'm not sure if he's, that's from a previous time.
Albert and Ramon still have their hands up. I'm going to start with Ramon and unmute you, and then if you have a question, if not, we'll move forward.
Hi, again, it's me again. No, I just wanted to add that as someone that commuted from Watson for years to periodically to Salinas when I had to go to the Workers' Comp Appeals Board, from me and for a lot of the commuters from Watson, we use primarily the so I think you go through two routes to go to Salinas. You either go through 183 or you go through San Miguel Canyon. So, you know, I would say that 50% of the time probably go San Miguel Canyon, 50% of the time would go through 183, depending on what time of the day it was. The later the day, the more likely it would go to San Miguel Canyon. But in terms of the SHOP program, I just wanted to say that it is a competitive program. I think the different districts do compete for those funds, and I'm glad that the money is being allocated for those improvements in Castroville. That community has been long overdue for that type of investment.
Great, thank you, Ramon. Any other questions or comments? It looks like Albert's hand popped back up.
I'm going to unmute you now, Albert.
Yeah, so one thing that just came up to my head, and this might be a silly question. Have you guys conducted any studies, or can we do any kind of studies of what the current flow of traffic is right now on Merritt and how fast people are going? And when this new beautiful project gets to be completed, is it going to benefit by people driving slower, or are they going to be driving faster? How can we get some kind of data as far as the before and after of what the current problem we have, and also with traffic? With this new construction, is it going to help the traffic flow being more efficient? Does that mean by them moving faster, or is it going to be more efficient by them driving slower and having more congestion on Merritt Street?
So as to data, I can kind of start with that one, and then I might have Steve talk to traffic flow. But there's a lot of data that Caltrans collects, and so we have the census counters that are along 183, and so we collect data such as like traffic volumes, you know, peak hour information, as well as freight percentages and what those mixes look like. You know, are they commuters? Are it freight traffic? Truck traffic, that sort of thing. So we do have a lot of like historical data as well as present day data. As far as traffic flows, you know, and Steve, if you want to touch on this a little bit more, one of the things that I think is important to realize is that the Highway 183 is a multi-user corridor. You have commuters, you have freight traffic, and then you have the mixture of pedestrians, and, you know, complete streets, active transportation type traffic users within your corridor, and transit as well. And so one of the things that's important to remember is that we have to, when we're doing a project, we have to consider all the users, and sometimes those needs are different. And so I'm going to let Steve go ahead and talk about volumes and operations a little bit with how that's going to look in a future year.
Sure. Thank you, Brandy. Albert, you bring up a really good point, and that is people will typically choose the route of least resistance. And the challenge is that on the coast, there's not a lot of secondary routes for people to use, and so they choose this to the challenge of being a community member and having it pass through there. The project has a regulated speed limit, and when people don't observe it, it's something that we struggle with as an agency because we get these comments a lot, and we're inordinately sensitive to it because we don't have a whole lot of tools in our tool chest to slow the public down. And as Brandy had mentioned, we're continuing to consider and look at and discuss and ask for help in making an improvement at Washington Street. But what we're talking about largely is an enforcement issue and then a greater circulation deficiency. And so I don't expect the speeds to be higher as a result. And I don't expect the people to divert in that direction because of this improvement. I'm hoping it's going to play out a little bit more like Corby said in our landscape comment, that is that as we create more of a sense of community in the downtown area, as we provide bulb outs, which shorten the crossing distance and increase the line of sight to pedestrians, as we make bicycles more visible, but not necessarily take out businesses along the corridor to widen the street, that there is some calming effect. I don't expect it to be significant. The goal wasn't to make improvements for the people going through town. It was really an attempt to make improvements for the people living in town. And there's a delicate balance there. And so I don't know that we hit it the way everybody will be happy. It's certainly our best attempt to do what's best for the community.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.
Katrina, do we have any more questions?
Nope, we're all set. Unless, Albert, if you had something else, I can unmute you.
I'm good. I just want to thank everybody. Thank you for everything. And, you know, I'm just my last thing that I throw out there. I know we want to make this, like this gentleman just mentioned, something beautiful for the community, but we also want to take in consideration making it safe and efficient, you know, and getting it right.
Great. Thank you so much, Albert, for your input tonight. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close our question and answer time, and when we'll finish up with our final slides. Let's see here. Okay. So I just wanted to speak briefly on what's coming up. Orchid, I think that we may have some more Spanish translation at this point, but I'll try and keep this part brief. So we have what's coming up is, you know, tonight is the virtual public meeting. We have the environmental document out for public review, with it finalizing May 7th to June 11th of 2021.
Lo que viene enseguida de este proyecto es el proyecto ambiental documento va a estar revisado para que todos lo puedan ver de mayo 7 a junio 11.
Our final environmental document is anticipated to be complete this summer, either June or July of 2021.
El documento final va a estar completado en junio a julio del 2021.
And then, like we mentioned previously, we'll begin, our design will be complete in March of 2023, with construction beginning in November of 2023.
El diseño será completado en marzo del 2023 y la construcción comenzará en noviembre del 2023 y la construcción terminará en octubre del 2025.
And then ending in construction in October 2025. I think you already got that. As a reminder, you know, I want to make sure you take a few minutes to complete a survey found on our project website. This is information that's voluntary and will enable Caltrans to identify impacted residents and communities affected by a federal aid highway project. So please check out the survey on the Title VI Public Participation Survey.
Si tiene un momento, por favor, complete el cuestionario que está en esta página de internet para saber su opinión del título 6 de los requisitos del público participatorio.
All right. And so thank you for joining us tonight. You'll notice our contact information. We have Matt Fowler, who's our environmental senior, and his information is on the screen. It's also in the chat bar, as well as myself, Brandy Ryder. I am the project manager for the project, so feel free to contact me at the phone number on the screen is actually incorrect. We'll put my correct phone number in the chat bar. Thank you so much. And then we'll go ahead, just for those of you that are still on the line, we're going to go ahead and upload the presentation. We did record it, and so as soon as it's complete, we will put that presentation up on the website. We thank you so much, and you guys all have a good night.